So I should have said, so if you've got questions, please put them in the Q&A. That helps us be organized about them, but we're going to get started. Hi, Tammy and Scott. I'm 32-year-old sex and porn addict. I finally have 3 months of sobriety, yay, in SLAA, joining 16 months ago after my rehab. I have never dated and never had a girlfriend. I paid for sex since age 19. I'm feeling a bit lost as I fear I am going to slip or may even relapse. I am finally getting to know myself and connecting with my body too. I understand as a heavy porn user, it may take a year for my body to recover from porn-induced erectile dysfunction and also come back to baseline dopamine level. What do you both think is a good idea for guys like me to date after step 9 or 12 months sober? Would appreciate your feedback. Kindest regards. Great questions. So thank you for sharing your journey. You are like, this is so the journey. So thank you for sharing. You're exactly where you're supposed to be. But, you know, Scott, you work with lots of guys, you know, with these type of questions. So what are your thoughts?
Boy, I have a lot of thoughts. Number one, you're not alone. A lot of sex addicts don't have a lot of actual sex. It's more about the escape and the anticipation and the chase, and there's usually a lot of porn involved. Every sex addict I know is also a porn addict. Not every porn addict is a more general sex addict. A lot of porn addicts, that's their only behavior. Says you've been paying for sex as well, which to me is kind of like live porn. You know, it's very non-intimate, it's very non-challenging. You don't have to be vulnerable. There's no risk of rejection. Porn never says no. Sex workers, maybe they say no to certain things, but you know, you get what you pay for.
It's transactional, yeah.
Yeah, it's a transaction. You know, as far as when you're ready to date, you know, one of the things we're seeing with porn addicts is there is often a sort of a developmental stoppage when the addiction starts. So, you know, kids who start with porn at 11 or 12, when they get sober 15, 18, 20 years later, emotionally, in terms of emotional intimacy relationships, you know, romantic relationships, they're still basically 12 because that's when they stopped learning and started just getting their needs met with pornography. So, you know, you may want to work through some social skills development. You may need to, or you may be perfectly okay to just go out and ask somebody out. You know, so giving you a time frame is kind of impossible. It might be 3 months, it might be 6 months, it might be 12 months or 2 years even. Generally about 12 months. You know, if you want to start dating, it's worth doing it. In the sex and porn, or the Sex Addiction 101 workbook, there's an exercise for a dating plan, or you can just email me, scott@seekingintegrity.com. I will send you that exercise. Do the dating plan before you try to date. That's number one. And number two, make sure you have a lot of support in place, because the number one trigger for relapse for sex and porn addicts, or addicts in general, is a failed relationship, or even a good relationship sometimes. So, you know, do not do this on your own. You don't get to date on your own. Sorry. I know you're 32. You feel like you should be able to do it on your own. No, not a good idea while you're starting up. So for the first year or so of dating, you really need a posse. So that, you know, because you're basically, sorry, a 12-year-old at this point in terms of dating. So you need people to say, you're crazy. Oh, no, she sounds really nice, you know. So, yeah, I mean, this answer could go on. We could have a whole webinar just on this topic. Tammy?
Well, I have a lot. So just remember that dating isn't immediate sex. So dating is a process, and I 100% agree. Have a posse with you, have a dating plan. And I don't care. I mean, honestly, even at this point, I'm happily married, but you know, I would make sure that I had trusted friends. If I was in the dating world, I would still want input, because, you know, I could see things in a better light or a worse light than they really are.
You need to know what your goals for dating are as well. Am I looking for a long-term relationship? Am I looking for just a casual dating relationship? Am I looking to learn how to date? you need to know what your goals are going in. And then you build a dating plan based off of that. Like, here are red lights, like absolute no's, and here are slippery things that I need to pay attention to, and here are green lights that I'm actually looking for. Like, we have common interests, and this person returns phone calls, things like that. That's not still in a relationship, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, and on the first date, it isn't like, hi, I'm a porn addict, and I mean, like, it's getting to know people, in a very different way. So, but being able to tolerate being vulnerable, which is exactly the opposite of everything you've experienced thus far. You've kept yourself, this is not judgmental. This is just a reality of like transactional sex. Like Scott said, if they're paying or you're paying, they're servicing. Porn doesn't ever say no, doesn't ever judge. So yeah, so it's going to be scary, and it's going to be okay. And I think even just a goal of, because I suspect that you may be more isolated often, that goes with the territory. I know it's COVID, but still there are people that you can learn to do new things. So my daughter would kill me if she knew I was saying this online, but she moved to a new town. She doesn't know people. She has taken she's going to a bouldering class. She's going to a snowshoeing class. She's getting out there to try to meet people and see what she likes to do. So it's one of those things where, just go explore some things that, may be of interest that you wouldn't have even thought of, because you were busy, watching porn. And so, but have the support, and going on a bad date is just a good story. It isn't like a failure in life. It is like, it's kind of the stuff that you go, oh, you should hear this one, so it's all good. You're like, yeah. It's okay.
That's one of the reasons it's helpful to know what your goals are. If your goal is, I'm learning how to date, if you have a crappy date, okay, let's learn from it and move on. If I'm looking for casual, it's like, okay, well, there's someone else. If I'm looking for long term, it's like, okay, that's not the right person, clearly, so let's move on to someone else. And it's not a failure, it's an experience.
Right. Yes. Yeah.
Closer to your goal, whatever that is.
If you met the perfect person on the first date, I would be terrified, because I would think that like you are way, Christmas lights and overdressing, and like it's, yeah. So hopefully that's helpful. But like everything in life, you just have to do it. At some point you have to go, I'm willing to do this. I'm going to be willing. So with support. Okay. So the next question, I can't get my cursor to, okay. Hi, Tami. Oops. Oh, shoot. Did I hit the wrong one? No, I didn't. Never mind. Sorry. It's been a long day. Hello, I'm a recovering porn addict and haven't acted out for about 6 months. I still have triggers, I think.
I think that might be urges or triggers.
Urges. Okay. Yes.
Some spell check is fun sometimes.
Yes.
They put something that we actually don't want to say.
Yes. So urges and being able to manage it with meetings and check-ins. I still haven't returned to normal and face porn-induced erectile dysfunction. Let's talk about that a bit too. Question is now how my issue is not porn, but the memories I have that I can't get rid of. Is that the issue here, and how can I move on to the next level?
Okay. First of all, congratulations on not using porn for 6 months. There's several things I want to talk about. Number one, there's porn and there's not porn. And not porn is imagery that is technically not porn, but we use it like it's porn, and we use it to fuel sexual fantasies and masturbation. And it's basically the same as using porn. So I would encourage you to explore that in your life, number one. Number two, we have a porn addiction work group, which I'll let Tami tell you about in a second, and I strongly encourage you to take that. It's 6 weeks online. It gives you a lot of this information. Porn-induced erectile dysfunction. This is very, very common among porn addicts of all ages. I had a consultation with a guy who was 18 years old, so a kid, and he was struggling with this because of porn addiction. And it was, it was like, what is wrong with me? I'm like, okay, well, porn. That's what's going on. So porn-induced erectile dysfunction, it is not the frequency of masturbation. What it is porn is we call it a super stimulant. It's basically meth. It's the sexual equivalent of meth. It's the most potent thing you can put into your body or your mind are meth and porn. It's this constantly changing imagery. So it's part of the intensity is originalness. That's not the word I'm searching for. David would know it.
Well, it's the 1,000 images in a minute.
Novelty.
Yeah.
Novelty increases intensity. There's so much of it, and it takes us places that expand our arousal template or kind of wake up elements of our arousal template that are often hidden. And then if we get into a relationship with a single real world partner, it doesn't matter how beautiful or loving or wonderful that person is, they cannot replicate that intensity. Even if we find them incredibly attractive, we don't get the same dopamine and adrenaline hit. And so the equipment doesn't work quite as well. It takes 6 months to a year. Usually the younger you are, the faster you recover. If you're older, age can play into it as well. Various medications can play into it. Now, as for memories, memories are, I call them mind porn, basically. And I haven't looked at porn in a very, very long time, but I can remember porn that I saw 25 years ago. It is burned into my brain. And I can do two things with that. I can keep the door closed on it, or I can take it out and fantasize and relive it. And if I'm fantasizing and reliving it, it is a problem for me. That pathway stays open, and all of the problems related to porn use also stay open. So yeah, you're going to have to find some new pathways. This is one of the things we talk about in both the sex addiction work group and the porn addiction work group. The advanced levels is, when you want to move forward into healthy, non-addictive sexuality, you have to ignore that old superhighway that's burned into your brain by porn or strip clubs or whatever it is. And you have to start traveling that winding path through the woods. And sometimes guys have to go back to 7th grade when they first started becoming aware of being attracted. Like the fact that holding hands would have been like, whoa, like a serious rush. You have to go back to that and sort of reparent yourself from a sexual standpoint. You have to relearn sexuality, and you have to shut down the addictive pathways. So yeah, the memories are a problem.
Well, and I'm going to say that memories are a problem, particularly because, and I hear this often from a betrayed partner. Like let's say it's within a relationship, and they're wondering if their significant other is having sex with them or doing the euphoric recall of the porn, and it could be either one. I mean, it really is. What do you do with those pathways? How do you create new ones? So I agree. I did put in the chat on seekingintegrity.com is the link to the work group. The porn addiction level 1 starts tomorrow evening and goes for 6 weeks. They're great courses. I hear consistently, both from the porn addiction, the sex addiction, and we will have Out of the Doghouse starting January 10th. And that is for men who have been caught cheating. They don't identify as a sex or porn addict, but have been caught. Well, they aren't willing to yet, so they're going. Yeah. I mean, some of them I think will find, oh yeah, I have a more problematic issue, but some of them are men who were caught cheating. So we'll see. But anyway, on seekingintegrity.com are the work groups. The couples healing from betrayal will start again in January as well. But going back to this, you get a foundation of recovery. I haven't acted out in about 6 months. What I didn't hear, I'm doing meetings and check-ins, and I know this is a short snippet. So like, what is your 3-circle plan? What do you, what else are you doing? Meetings are great. Check-ins are great. Scott and I are both, big on the 12 steps. So are you actually working the steps? What are you doing? Because I can sit in a meeting, and I've sat in a lot of meetings with lots of people who didn't really make progress in recovery. They were just warming the seat. So, but I'm thrilled you're here. keep digging in. We've got lots of men's groups on sexandrelationshiphealing.com. And women's groups too. We've got, female, sex, love, and porn addict group, drop-in group specifically. So lots of free resources on the site too. Okay, next question. My SA and I were in what I thought was a good space. He went to an SPA meeting. I was crying with my back to him. He came up behind me and asked me what he did. I explained he did nothing. I was releasing something unrelated to him. He said he was talking about shame and procrastination in the group, and then proceeded to gaslight for 3 hours. How can I prepare for this unexpected set of events?
I'm taking it. This is an SPA meeting where both partners are welcome. Usually it's only the addict.
Yeah.
Sex and porn.
Yeah.
So anyway, so yeah, it sounds to me, and I'm not going to try and make excuses, but it sounds like he was probably sharing about something that was really hard for him to talk about, and you were crying about something else, and he may have been hurt by that. I don't know what gaslighting for 3 hours looks like. But how can I prepare for this unexpected set of events? Look, you're on a roller coaster. He's on a roller coaster. It is not the same roller coaster. Sad but true. And sometimes, your roller coasters are going to crash into each other, and it's going to stink. And that's not fun. And I don't know how you prepare for it. Tami, do you have any thoughts?
Yeah. Like we were talking about, people getting triggers and urges. Partners get triggered with things too. I do have, I'm very curious because I hold my meeting sacred, and there is no way, I would make sure that anybody is not in the room, even if I'm doing it, online. It would be really important. Thankfully, ours are back in real person, so I can go, and that's good. But so I would make sure that you each have your own space to do your meetings in. And
there are groups that will have an occasional couples meeting, and most people find it very helpful.
I've not heard of that, so tell me more.
A lot of the S programs either have a couples meeting or just once in a while. So that's not that unusual.
Any of the S
normally
programs?
Addicts don't want their partner in the room, but
okay.
Yeah.
Well, and maybe partners, I don't know if I would want to be in it. So that's news to me. I know Recovering Couples Anonymous and things like that, but I've not heard of, the 12-step meetings I go to, we don't have, other people come in. So that's news to me. I appreciate that. I'm going to learn more. So, but yeah, the gaslighting for 3 hours, I'm going if you knew what was happening, what do you need to do for a healthy boundary for you so that you extricate yourself? I need to go take care of me, go call my friend, go do, I've got my meditation things, there's all kinds of things I do for me, but I would probably, for me, extricate myself from the situation and just go, my boundary is you go do you, and I'm going to go take care of me. But feeling like I'm getting gaslighted for 3 hours, or maybe you found out afterwards that, for 3 hours, that's what was happening. I guess I'm unclear. And so I'm going to go with, what healthy boundaries do you need to do? I agree with, I love roller coasters, and your analogy of them crashing into each other just made me sad. But yeah, no, it is. There's one right at Cedar Point that there's two coasters, and they're, they're kind of racing each other. And I always think of that with those rides. It's like, you're not on the exact same moment, going on the ups and downs. But you taking care of you. I read something today. I'll see if I can pull it out. But in fact, I think I can really fast, because I was like, oh, this is so good. The recovery teach. Oh, and it was actually from the Al-Anon, but so Harriet Hunter did a webinar on our site, and I actually read her meditation every day. And so the mantra of the 3 C's carries a message. I didn't cause it. I can't cure it. I can't control it. And that's good for me to remember because, like, I want to control everything anyway. Recovery teaches us that we keep the focus of change on ourselves, our thoughts, and our reactions. And that to me is what I always have to remember. I use the serenity prayer of, like, I can only control my actions and reactions. I can't control what anybody else is doing. And my serenity gets negatively impacted if I'm looking for other people to do whatever. And, from a partner standpoint, and I'm not minimizing this, please don't think that I'm minimizing. I'm just trying to help you find some safety. So what do you need to do for you to have healthy boundaries so that his addiction is not taking over control of all areas of your life? What can you do to pull back in so that you have, that safety around you? And you said you were in a good space. Okay, good. Think about that. You were in a good space. What do you need to do to get back to that good space for you? Whether he shows up in that same good space, or not is up to him. So, but I'm really sorry. I mean, the gaslighting for 3 hours, and just getting gaslighted is.
I put a link in the chat feature to what we call a respectful conflict agreement. A lot of couples therapists will use this, and it'll keep you from having those 3-hour sessions of misery. If you and your partner can implement it and stick to it. So it's worth looking at.
So the next question, my addict spouse says he has no desire or urge to have sex. He says he has been sober for 4 years. He says he has had no withdrawal symptoms, but believe me, I have witnessed them all. I'm with you. Anger, irritability, blame, restless legs while sleeping, which just occurred again weeks ago. ED a few times. Why no libido after 4 years? Is it possible? The most hurtful part of this is he said to me, I can have sex, I just don't want it with you. He said it out of anger. Wow. Yeah. Oh, wow.
Yeah, that's an anger statement. Number one. As we get older, our libido diminishes. Sex addiction does a number on our libido. It's not hugely unusual for an addict to, in sobriety, lose a lot of his or her libido. The big one here is it can still be very hard for addicts. We compartmentalize, and sex is in this compartment, and love, like actual love and intimacy, is in another compartment. And for us to integrate those compartments can be very, very difficult. I hope your spouse wants to integrate those. It's something that can be worked on in therapy, usually underlying trauma issues, trust issues, things that have nothing to do with you. But, until that work is done, I don't know that this situation is going to change all that much. Now, the angry statement is an angry statement, and I hope you take it as an anger statement rather than a reality statement. So, Tami.
This is a him, not you issue, and I'm really sorry. And I hear he's been sober for 4 years, and I'm going like, he's not acted out for 4 years. But wow, he does not sound like he's on any kind of a recovery journey, nor does he sound like he's even trying to be. It's like, oh, I stopped. I don't have any desire. But yeah, anger and rage actually have a lot of dopamine, and like that can be a pretty powerful thing too. And I've used this not too long ago. I talked about dry drunk, so with alcohol, we talk about dry drunks. It's like, I'm not drinking, but I am a miserable, SOB, like all the things that you're talking about there. It's, I think, the worst place to be. I've stopped the acting out, but I also don't have the recovery tools to do life in a meaningful way where I'm connected, and I'm contributing, not just being, I read nasty, I read anger and, all the problems, so again, doesn't have the freedom of the recovery tools where we learn to live in our integrity. We learn to show up in a meaningful way. We learn not to, intentionally hurt people. I mean, that feels really intentional when he's raging like that and saying nasty things. So again, like I said, for the last person, what do you need to do for you to have a healthy boundary? What do you need to do to get support? Some people leave, but that isn't everybody. Lots of people stay in a relationship. They just learn to not expect, that for, support even from their spouse. It can be financial, whatever. Don't care, but what do you need? Because as human beings, we need to be in healthy relationships and connected in meaningful ways. So, where can you get that? Do you have a tribe of, betrayed partners and, family and friends and other things? It doesn't have to all be about the addiction. Do you have the people that can support and give you the love and connection that you deserve? Okay, next question. My SA husband primarily acted out with porn, lust, and sexual fantasy on and off during our entire marriage of 40 years. He said on his full therapeutic disclosure that he only fantasized about someone else about 10 times during our marriage and passed a polygraph. I'm concerned about starting up our sexual relationship again. How realistic is it for him to be able to have sex with me without having to fantasize about some other image? I'm
guessing that when he said on his full disclosure, he only fantasized about someone else about 10 times during our marriage. That's like, I'm assuming that means during sex with you. Because if he was acting out with porn and lust and sexual fantasy off and on for 40 years, it was more than 10 times in general. So I'm guessing that 10 times is while having sex with you. You're concerned about starting up sexual, well, you've been cheated on, you've been betrayed. That is understandable. How realistic is it for him to be able to have sex with me without having to fantasize about some other image? Very. Sex addicts, we act out sexually. It's not about sex. It's about escape. So it's an emotional escape. So that's why things like porn and just general sexual fantasy, or, I used to cruise for prostitutes for all day and not pick anybody up. It wasn't about the sex. It was about getting out of my head, avoiding stress, avoiding anxiety, avoiding depression, avoiding loneliness. It's not, if you're in a relationship and you're a sex addict, it's not about, I'm not attracted to my wife. 99 out of 100 guys I talk to in relationships who've had an affair or betrayal or something, I'll say, we're the, was that stripper as pretty as your wife? No. Was that affair partner as smart or funny as your wife? No. Was that porn person you're looking at as interesting or meaningful to you as your wife? No. Then why did you do it? It wasn't about my wife. It was about escape, in the moment escape. It's why alcoholics drink. It's why drug addicts get high. It's why gamblers gamble. It's not about the money with gambling addicts. If it was, they wouldn't do it because they lose their shirts. It's about escape. It's the secondary gain of escape. So for him to still be attracted to you and want to be sexual with you is very realistic. And if he's telling you he's sexually attracted to you and you would like to, it's up to you about whether sex proceeds in your relationship. Tami and I, we talked. When did we talk? And we did one of these and we talked about healthy sexuality. Was it last week? Filling in for David?
I lose track, but yes, we recently did. So yeah. Yes, I think it was on last Wednesday. Yeah.
The elements of healthy sexuality. So go to our YouTube channel and look up Tami and I from the middle of last week.
Or on sexandrelationshiphealing.com under the resource tab. Right. You'll see previous recorded webinars, and they're all right there. So that's easy.
We talked about healthy sexuality and the elements that build up to it, and it starts with non-sexual stuff. It starts with, basically, connecting with yourselves, your five senses, and then it moves to connecting with other people, not necessarily each other, and then emotional intimacy, and then non-sexual physical touch. And then you're ready for sex, or not. but it sounds like you need to go through those steps before you're going to be ready for sex. And there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, don't have sex if you're not ready. You are not obligated to have sex. You know,
can you say that one more time?
you are not obligated to have sex. And that goes especially for betrayed partners, but also for addicts, because sometimes the betrayed partner wants sex and the addict isn't ready yet. The addict is saying, I still feel like I'm too caught up in my addiction, and I'm afraid I will act out using my wife as an object. And I don't want to do that. You know, so my answer is don't have sex until you're ready, but explain why. You know,
Right.
like, this isn't I'm not attracted to you. This is I am not ready. And for you, you're not ready. That's okay.
Yeah, and the whole start slow I mentioned earlier, or on another one, I don't know, but sex isn't just about orgasm and penetration. It's like all the things that Scott just talked about, that he talked about last week on the webinar. That that's how you create intimacy. If you are in a place where you are trusting him, then working towards that seems like a realistic goal. So, but again, go slowly and continue to take. Here's the big thing: communicate. I'm fearful of this. I am concerned about this. What can we do? It might be eyes wide open, it may be lights on, whatever you need to do to make sure that it's safe for you when you actually get to that spot. But that could be a lot of steps down the road yet. So okay, next question. For mother enmeshed men, how do you know if ED is related to porn or mother enmeshment issues? I guess ED would go away with prolonged avoidance of porn, and with mother enmeshment issues, it would not go away until the mother is emancipated.
I would encourage you to come to John Taylor's webinar on Thursdays, the second and fourth Thursday of the month, and ask this question. I know that erectile dysfunction can be caused by porn use. I do not know that erectile dysfunction is related to enmeshment issues. It could be, it might not be. I can't give you a good answer. John Taylor can give you a good answer. Thursdays, second and fourth Thursday of the month at 11 a.m. Ask this exact question, please, because I think it's a really good question. I don't have an answer. Tami, do you have any thoughts on it? Or?
I have thoughts on it, but I agree with that. But I know that often the enmeshment causes, it's a betrayal to be connected with someone. So it's often why a mother enmeshed man can go have transactional sex, because there's no emotions to it. So there isn't erectile dysfunction with transactional sex, but when it's a connection, when I want to have sex with somebody I care about, all of a sudden that's a betrayal to the enmeshment. So it's complicated. And where is sex? Most of it's in our heads, so like if all of those weird, things are going on in our brains, there's too many people in the brain. So, but I do know that for some, having doing the workshop, John Taylor does a weekend workshop for men who are mother enmeshed men, and they find the emancipation that they really need, and I've heard from spouses that the man that they always wanted was finally in their bed, so just saying. Okay. Do porn, meth, and coke provide the same levels of dopamine? I have the chart on this. Do you remember what the levels?
I don't have the chart handy, but I pretty much know it. If your standard dopamine level is like 100, that's just like your baseline walking around dopamine. Chocolate cake is like 110, 115. It goes up the ladder. Orgasm is the highest natural dopamine level, and it's a little over 200. Cocaine is a little above 200. Methamphetamine, by the way, is 1,300. Meth is a very dangerous drug. It does things to your brain that are not good. And by the way, meth rots your teeth. The hardest substances in the body is your teeth. Meth rots your teeth. Imagine what it's doing to your brain. Stop using meth. Pornography, I don't think we have numbers on that, but I would suggest that pornography probably pumps out more dopamine than just an orgasm because of the novelty and the constantly changing intensity and the surprise element and all of that, plus intermittent reward, which is another thing that bumps up the dopamine. Pornography is probably orgasm plus some bump ups from intermittent reward and novelty. So probably 250 to 300 pornography. And just in case anybody's wondering, nicotine gives you the same amount of dopamine as cocaine. Higher, it's a little higher than orgasm. Cigarettes.
So just remember that, people that go smoking and vaping doesn't really matter. Yes, it really, our treatment program, Seeking Integrity Los Angeles, we're now smoke, no vape. And there's a reason, because Dr. David has explained, that the chances of relapse are so greatly increased, like practically, 100% if you, decide to continue to do that, because you're always keeping that drip going, so you don't really get, into recovery. So thank you for answering that one. So, okay. If I reach out to friends and family or these webinars, my addict spouse accuses me of trying to embarrass him, destroy his life, and slander him. Why does this happen? Control. He's trying to control you so that you stop doing that, and he can continue to be the same miserable, sober, I'm going to say abstinent, SOB. But if he can make you feel bad and stop you from getting connected and everything else. Are you still there? You froze, or did I freeze? One of us froze. I'm going to keep going. Hopefully we're okay. Oh, he froze. Okay. Thank you. Okay. So this is all about controlling your behavior, because if he can stop you from doing those things, then he can lie to you, be angry with you, do all the things that he has continued to do. What do you need to do for support for you? And again, we talk about healthy boundaries a lot on lots of different webinars and things. Gavin Sharp did a webinar on Wednesday of last week. I'm getting confused, but he did a great one, and it talked about what healthy boundaries are and how everybody needs healthy boundaries, not just about addiction and things like that, but you need and deserve healthy connection with real people. So, what do you need to do? And it can be, you're not providing this until and unless I see these things. This is what I'm going to do. And, people do therapeutic separation within the home. People, there's consequences, but it's not punitive. It's what do you need to do to set up, healthy, safe space for you. So, but like I read that and I was like, it's control, because if he can keep you from doing that, then he can keep the illusion out there. And I'm a sober person. I'm doing all this. I'm a great guy. Just look. But it's compartmentalized, and he's treating you poorly. So, do you really see men 70-year-olds changing addiction since 20 or before? Yes, we've had guys in our treatment program that have been in their 70s, and they absolutely can change. Is it harder? Sure, because those patterns are old, but those are the situations where, going to a therapist, even a really, really good one for 50 minutes a week, once a week, that's not going to get to the old, stuff. So that's, why going and getting real, really high level of help, is what changes. With our treatment program, we are doing 4 to 5 hours of assessment before they even come in. We want to know about all that stuff that's been building up for 50 years. Is it going to be magically changing him, in the short amount of time he's with us? No. But man, to have a foundation on which to build, have the support, have a plan, that's what changes things. So it depends. If he, as I often say, if someone engages with their recovery with the same fervor that they engage with their addiction, they'll do really well. He's got 50 years of, probably even more. Like you said, I really believe that, addiction, the patterns that we're setting up, even if we don't have the addictive behavior, that may come much later. But, Dr. Rob talks about in Prodependence, like that he learned that the world was not safe at age 4. Now, was he going out and having sex, with other people? No, but he learned those patterns of like how to dissociate and things like that. So what he's going to need to learn is how to do life differently. He can, and you go, oh, he's 70, my dad's in his 90s, like, I'm sorry, I want people to still be doing good things, even when they're older. So, we can learn, we can be the people that we're supposed to be. My dad is not a sex addict. I'm gonna, so it's one of those things where, we can learn to be different, but, in fact, he's not even an addict. They all look at me as the anomaly in the family. They're proud of me though. So anyway, okay. As a partner of an addict, most information on disclosures focuses on the sexual acting out. What are examples of information an addict should include as it relates to the emotional betrayal activities? We recently went through a disclosure, but found in the follow-up questions that my spouse omitted significant events where he engaged in short-lived emotional affairs, and his CSAT told him that was okay to, okay, so his CSAT told him that it was okay to leave out. So did the CSAT tell you that it was okay, or did you only hear this from your addict who has a reason to lie? That's my first question of this is, if you only heard it from your addict, if you heard it from the CSAT, if the CSAT really knew about that, well, clearly these are issues that are coming up for you. So what did your CSAT say? How did, like, this is one of those where the 4 of you need to talk. It needs to be like, because clearly it wasn't thorough enough for, to be helpful. The point of these is not to have the 20-page, narrative. This is, 2 pages. This is the facts and the data. It's information. It's what you need to know on some levels. Him, I'm sorry, going into a sob story of, oh, and this happened to me when I was like, that's irrelevant. This is information so that you guys can set the, the foundation for moving forward. What I hear is he left out stuff that is problematic that about. So this would be one of those, take it back to your qualified professionals. And, unfortunately, it sounds like there may be round 2. I'm really sorry. I hate when that happens, but that's my take. What are your thoughts, Scott? You're muted.
First of all, emotional affairs should absolutely be covered in a disclosure. I would be shocked if a CSAT told any client, no, don't include that. So I agree with Tami. Maybe you and your CSAT and him and his CSAT need to sit down and discuss why they weren't included. Because and just, addicts out there, if you want to save your relationship, don't leave stuff out of your disclosure.
Yes, don't lie, don't minimize.
If your partner would want to know, it needs to go in the disclosure, period. And you don't get to judge that. If you think maybe your partner would want to know, it needs to be in the disclosure, period. Because nothing will damage your relationship, will further damage your relationship more than a botched disclosure, short of continuing to cheat and lie about it.
And what do you, it just, I know it's addiction, but it still boggles my mind that the addict would think that the partner isn't going to find out, that this is going to be, or that they're going to be more hurt, or that they're going to leave if they tell them. They're more likely to leave if you leave it out
They're
and
going to
they
leave
don't.
if you don't tell them.
Yes. And, it's so pushing, like, okay, the purpose of a disclosure is to set a foundation of trust and honesty on which to build. You've just taken that and pushed it back a whole bunch of steps. Now your partner is going like, I did a disclosure and I didn't get the truth. This person is still lying to me. How am I ever supposed to believe him or her? So don't do it. Don't do it. So, but I would go to the professionals, like, your support, CSAT, and like more needs to be discussed with your professionals. So is it harder for the addict to recover? Let's see, who has been acting out more frequently, more years, versus an addict who has been acting out less frequently, fewer years, because the neural pathways are more ingrained. This feels like the binge drinker, like, I think it's the same neural pathways. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, look, neurons that fire together wire together. So, when I pick up the drink and start pouring it down my throat and get drunk off of it, I have this pathway that burns in my brain if I do that enough. Sex addiction, porn addiction, the same thing happens. That said, I would actually say that those pathways can become more deeply burned in. And I think Dr. David would agree with me. He's our resident neuro guy.
With a higher frequency, is that what you're saying?
Yeah, higher frequency,
okay.
And more intensity. It is harder to recover from meth than it is to recover from alcohol.
Yes. Yeah.
Because that pathway, it's more deeply burned. It's an 8-lane superhighway instead of a 2-lane country road. So there is a difference. Now, that said, the process of recovery is the same either way. And, the process of recovery involves education, it involves support, it involves accountability. The more things you do for your recovery, the better off you are. And that is true whether you've been a sex addict for a year or 50 years. The process is the same. And I've seen people who've been addicts for 40 and 50 years come in and get sober and stay sober without relapsing. I've seen people who've been an addict for a year who are on the revolving door plan for the first 2 years of recovery. They're a revolving door for longer than they were an active addict. So, it depends on the person, and mostly it's motivation. I mean, I've told this story before. I'm sure Tammy's heard it. When I came into recovery for every reason other than I wanted to change my life. I wanted people to still talk to me. I wanted to stay out of jail. I wanted to keep my job. I wanted, I wanted my consequences to go away. They didn't go away. I had to walk through all of them. And I woke up one day and I had a drink in my hand because I knew that I had to get out of the sex addiction stuff. But I was still drinking and drugging. And I had a drink in my hand one day and I put it down and I went to a meeting. And that was the first time I went to a meeting for me. I knew I can't live this way anymore. I'm very unhappy. And every time I act out in any of my addictions, my life gets worse. Not better, it gets worse. I can't do this anymore. I want to change. And I mean, I was 25 years of active addiction up to that point, heavy active addiction in multiple addictions. And I haven't had a drink or a drug or acted out since. Because I wanted to change. I mean, I think that's the biggest, but of course, any addict can say, yes, I want to change. And we don't really know. But it clicked for me.
I ditto with that. That was when I finally, and we talk about in 12 step about surrendering, and it's so counterintuitive because we are all, going, no, we're fighting for it. But when I finally went, I can't live like this anymore. And I don't know how to not. And so but there were people that said, we can help you. You are A, salvageable, and B, we can help you. We've been on that path. We know where you're at. Like, that was so meaningful to me. But but I was thinking, whether it's somebody who binges or is doing this every day or whatever, it's the same triggers. It's like, there's, what's the underlying issue? There's something that makes, at that moment, I'm going to go do whatever I'm going to do, despite really negative consequences, to myself and everyone else. That makes it to be this compulsion choice. So we have to learn, when we feel uncomfortable, when we feel, that A, we will survive, and B, that we can learn to do something different through that. But we can learn. So as far as, is it harder or easier? I mean, it's a journey, and I'm still on the journey, and
it's not easy for anybody. Look, if any of us could recover on our own, we would.
Yes.
We're here.
Yes. Yeah.
Reaching out to each other, and most of us would rather eat a plate of worms than ask for help. And part of addiction recovery, the first thing we do in addiction recovery is ask for help. I mean, that's the first step. I need help.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. What's the connection between restless legs at night and SA? I don't know of any. Do you? I mean,
there are so many causes for restless legs and restless leg syndrome. Some of them are physical, genetic stuff, but also it can be related to anxiety, which can be physical or genetic, but it can also be related to addiction. I don't think there is an answer to that question.
I take magnesium because I get it, but it's like it's not related to my addiction. It's just related to my lack of magnesium. So, okay. How does resentment feed into addiction? My husband resents me and himself. I hear shame for himself and resents you because you're probably the reflection of like, oh, I'm not really in recovery. I'm not really doing things. So that's what I'm reading to this. What do you think, Scott?
Well, I'm not going to read anything into it. I'm just going to say that resentment is like drinking poison and expecting the other person to die.
True.
Does not make anything better. The number one trigger for relapse is relationship issues, and the number two trigger is resentment.
Yeah.
If I'm resentful about anything, I'm in a bad headspace, being in a bad headspace feeds my addiction. I don't like being in a bad headspace. So, I'll go look at porn so I don't have to think about my resentment. Or I'll go eat a gallon of ice cream instead of a scoop of ice cream so I don't have to think about my resentment. Or I'll get drunk, or this or that. Alcoholics are notorious for drinking without resentments. I'm mad at you, so I'll do something. I'll pour poison down my throat, and
I'll show you,
and then wreck my car and get arrested, end up in the hospital. But I'm mad at you. That's why I did this.
Yeah.
And resentments they're tough. Resentments can be overcome. By the way, the big resentments are I find easier to overcome than the little resentments. Little resentments, I can carry little resentments around for decades. In 2019, I released an old but small resentment, one a month. And the way I do it is the person I have a resentment against, I pray for them to have all the things that I would want in life. And I do that every day for 30 days, morning and night. And I get it. The first week I have a resentment that I'm praying for this person that I have a resentment against. And then it kind of kicks in. And by the end of the month, the resentment is gone. And I don't do any work on the actual resentment. What I do is I change my attitude toward the person. And it works. And I got rid of a bunch of very, very old, nasty, festering resentments that were over nothing, most of them. But those were the things that I used to act out over and drink over. And it was the little stuff, not the big stuff.
Oh, and mine were the big things. And like I spent,
I acted out over the big things too.
No, but it was like in sobriety, it was, somebody said, you're letting them live rent free in your head. And I hated that because that told me that I had control over this and I wanted it to be all about them. You don't understand. And so I did exactly what what you did. And yes, I still pull that out. And I can be, annoyed and upset that I have to pull this out and pray for the person to have good things and wish them good things and all of those things. But I know it works. So I'm willing to do that because I'm like, I don't want to think about this person, this event, this situation. I just don't, I value my serenity. I don't want to be resentful. So
Yeah,
and I don't want it to lead to the other stuff that is negative too. So
I would find myself driving down the road having an argument with someone who was 2,000 miles away that I hadn't seen in 35 years, that was completely unaware they were having an argument with me. The whole thing would play out because I would take out my old resentments and play with them. And it would just get me worked up and unhappy, and it messed with my serenity. You use the word serenity, and that's important. And that's why I did that work in 2019. I was tired of these people owning a little piece of my soul and messing with my serenity. So
they didn't even know, like you said, like
they didn't know.
They don't
no idea
know.
I was mad at them.
And a couple of people, I thought they'd be thrilled if they knew I was in this much turmoil, and I was just like, yeah, I'm not giving you that much control either. So, okay, we got a couple more questions. We're almost out of time. What are your thoughts on couples therapists keeping secrets from a spouse? The fact that the therapist kept my husband's addiction from me was a trauma in itself on top of the betrayal trauma. We are no longer seeing that therapist. It's still just really bugging me. So if you were seeing a couples therapist, the relationship is the
Client.
The coupleship is the client. Neither one of you are. And if it's a therapist that works within this field, that's so. I don't know if it's a generalist therapist, they don't know about this stuff. So if it was
your individual therapist should never be your couples therapist, and your partner's individual therapist should never be your couples therapist. You should each have an individual therapist, and the relationship should have a therapist, and that avoids this splitting or keeping a secret.
Or a conjoint session with both of your therapists as the couples. That works really good too. So keep that in mind. But yeah, as like within this arena, a couples therapist would say, I'm not going to keep secrets. There'd be a secrets policy. They would have paperwork that you both agree to so that you'd be, so it really is, what were the rules, for your couples therapy. But remember with a couples, your husband so I don't even know how the couples therapist knew about those secrets, I guess. So to me, this feels like,
the couples therapist was also his therapist, which it just doesn't work.
Which makes a huge mess, obviously. So let it go. That person wasn't the right fit for you. You're on a different journey.
Yeah.
Use the anti-resentment tools that we just talked about. Okay. My SA spouse says disclosure was a waste of time because it ruined our memories. My spouse says she had to have disclosure to consider staying. I would not want to know this info if I were her. I don't get it. Explain why this is so important to her. My SA spouse says disclosure was a waste of time because it ruined our memories. I think the addiction was the factor in ruining memories. So what happens for the betrayed partners is, so the addict has known about their behavior, their infidelity, all of their acting out the entire time. The spouse is thinking that we have this great relationship, we're the two of us are against the world, we've got this life together. And then they get discovery, and it's like they got hit by a Mack truck, and they're going, was everything a lie? And so of course their memories, they have a long time to pick out what really was true and what wasn't. So the point of disclosure, it's not about not knowing. They're looking for safety. They're looking to build trust and start over. I mean, it is, I know people that start an anniversary, like the anniversary date is different. They start, this is a new one. Like it changes everything. You eyes wide open can go forward, but it will never be the naive, oh, I trust this person completely. Again, this person hurt me.
Dr. Rob did a study with Charles Samenow and Jennifer Schneider about 10 or 12 years ago, And they wanted to know a lot of things, but one of the things they found out was the pain of betrayal is far less about what you did and far more about the secrets and lies. So when a betrayed partner wants to know, they want to get through, they need to work through that pain. So they need to know all of the actions and all of the secrets and lies so that they can start to trust you again. It's the loss of relationship trust that does the most damage to the betrayed partner. That's why they need disclosure. And whether the addict wants to give disclosure or not is irrelevant. If the addict wants to stay in this relationship and the betrayed partner wants disclosure, that's the only reason we need to give it, number one. And number two, the betrayed partner is not going to be able to heal until they're back at ground zero, so you can start rebuilding trust from ground zero instead of ground negative 3,000. And also, until they know everything, until the betrayed partner knows everything, they're going to make up stories in their head about what you did or might have done, or how it impacts them. And 90% of the time, those stories are going to be a lot worse than what you actually did. Get it out, and you'll typically feel better too, because you're no longer keeping.
Well, that's what makes me wonder, because it says, go to the next question. It says, explain to SA
Right.
husband why formal disclosure is important. Because he's like, he doesn't get it after disclosure. To me, like something's wrong with this picture if he doesn't get that disclose. So to me, I'm going like, did he keep some things away? Did he not have a complete so because to your point, the couples who do formal disclosure, both parties, 92% of them found it valuable and moving forward. 92%, so this feels like an 8% where somebody's going like, oh, it wasn't worth it, and we
And by the way, the same study that gave that 92% number, the 8% number, it was almost always related to a flawed disclosure where
right,
things were withheld.
Yeah. We are out of time. Thanks everyone for being here. Thanks for the questions. Thank you, Scott, for jumping in. I asked him today and he was, of course, I'm happy to. So thank you. So Scott will be on with Dr. David on Wednesday, and then alternating Thursdays with John Taylor. So the person that asked the great question about mother enmeshed men, please take that one to that particular webinar too. So bye everybody.
This Thursday, 11 a.m. I'll be on with John. So please bring that question.
Sounds good. Thank you. Bye-bye.